So I think while we allow people to dial in, sign in, etc., etc., we might as well kick off. So firstly, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good everything to everybody, whatever time you're dialing into this. And some of you may be watching the recording, of course. So whichever one of those works best for you, welcome to this ChatTalent webinar. For those that don't know me, I'm Alan Walker. I'm the host of ChatTalent.com, and I'm also the co-founder of a talent consultancy business called the Talent Finders. With me today is Tristan of Vonk. When I first met Tristan, I'd assumed he was going to be talking to a guy with a Dutch accent before he spoke, but then I realised very quickly he's actually from the West Midlands. Tristan's going to talk to us today about the three primary levels of recruitment marketing and how to make these work more effectively in your business. And having had a sneak peek look early today, I'm really pleased with the level and depth of content he's providing. The slide deck alone is well worth taking away. If you've got any questions as we go along, the best thing to do is pop those into the Q&A button. On mine, it's at the top of my screen. It might be at the bottom of yours, but you'll find it. It's relatively easy to spot. It's better that they go in there rather than the chat. We'll try and answer some of those on the fly if they kind of segue naturally with the conversation. Some we'll leave to the end. Some we might not get to depending on time, but we'll do our very best to come back to people and answer those on a one-to-one basis. We're also going to do a couple of new things today. So about a minute into Tristan's presentation, we're going to do a quick poll just to kind of take the pulse of the attendees and understand where you are at the moment with your recruitment marketing. And we're also going to attempt to do a Facebook live stream, which when I finish my intro, which is in about 10 seconds time, I'm going to kick off. So I'll put the link to that in the comments section. If anybody could share it on Facebook, that would be awesome, just to give us some exposure there. So as B.A. Baracus of the AT might say, enough of my jibber jabber. Over to you, Tristan.
Great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Alan, again. I hope that's a good sign of some of the things that we've been bringing to the show. I'm really happy with that you're pleased with what we showed earlier, and hopefully we can bring some great content for all the viewers today. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. What I'll do now is quickly share my screen so everyone will have access to the slideshow, and then we'll, as Alan mentioned, we're going to start with a quick poll. So the title for today's webinar is how to make, not break your hiring campaign, with the three main challenges recruitment marketing can solve for you. So as Alan mentioned, we want to start with a poll. This is a poll we actually ran at HR Tech World in Amsterdam last year. It went down really well. We got a lot of great information and information that was helpful for also other people in the industry to know as well. So we want to ask you guys, how do you rank your organization on recruitment marketing? So this should be 4 options of novice, beginner, mature, and advanced. And that's based on whether you think that your ad hoc strategy, whether you're doing things on an ad hoc or strategic level, in terms of planning and execution, whether you are doing things on a gut feeling or on a predictive way when it comes to advertising, and whether you do things on a manual or automated way when it comes to processes. So hopefully you guys have had a chance to put down a response. And what we'll do is we'll share this information with you guys in the email follow-up after the webinar. Cool. So before I start, I would like to give you a quick intro to myself and to Vonk. My name is Tristan de Coker, very Dutch last name, very Midlands accent. And as I mentioned, I'm from Vonk, so I'm a UK account executive. My background before Vonk was in digital marketing for a leading student and graduate company. There I was involved in launching new products, increasing traffic and conversion on the website through different targeted marketing campaigns, and working together with partners to create value for our users. my transition into the recruitment industry at first seemed like quite a big step from an outside perspective. However, when I explained and dived deeper into the trend of recruitment marketing, I saw huge similarities between how candidates and consumers behave, and lots of opportunity to bring some value with the modern online marketing approach to it. And at that point, I had to get involved, and as they say, the rest is history. So a quick intro of Vonk. We're a predictive hiring agency. So for over 12 years, we've been helping companies to target the right talent online. This way, we've helped over 2,000 customers generate over 50 million qualified applicants from online recruitment marketing campaigns. And we do this by combining artificial intelligence with data that we've acquired from measuring every view, every click, every application that we've generated, allowing us to predict what combination of channels will offer the best outcomes in terms of exposure and applications. This way, we help our customers to obviously increase the hiring speed and quality while reducing the risk and overall recruitment costs. But that's enough about us for this webinar. I hope it gives an idea about that we know what we're talking about. But let's move on to the actual webinar itself. So I always like to start these things with a definition of what recruitment marketing is, but obviously this varies every single time. Here's one that I particularly like from Brandon Hall Group, and this states that it is all activities and strategies aimed at building and maintaining an employer brand, extending reach and exposure of career opportunities, building and nurturing candidate relationships, and all messaging and advertising of talent acquisition efforts. Now, that's quite a complex definition, mainly because it's such a complex topic. So what we're going to try and do today is break this down. So this webinar is going to consist of 5 parts. First, I'll give you some context about the 3 levels at which candidates interact with your company. Secondly, I'll address employee value propositions. We can then go into the 3 main challenges that recruitment teams face when attracting talent online, and the differences between them, the business impacts that occur when they're not addressed, and of course, how to solve them. Finally, I will show you how to bring that all together, and along the way, I'm going to provide some real life examples of some companies that I think are really leading the way in that effort. So part 1 is understanding the 3 main levels of recruitment marketing. So when we talk about recruitment marketing, it's important not to limit ourselves to thinking only about one element, such as like job advertisements for individual roles, because there's a lot more to it than that. This chart provides a great overview of how talent acquisition professionals should see recruitment marketing broken down into 3 levels: the employer brand, target audience, and job level, to be precise. And I'll go into more detail about them later on. On the left axis, what you see is we have complexity. So this is the complexity of the challenge. So you can see this as, for instance, the number of hires you're looking to achieve, the specific audiences you're trying to attract, and the number of regions you're hiring in. On the bottom axis, we've got investment. So this can be broken down into things like time, money, effort, everything that needs to be done to achieve your hiring objectives. You can see how you can, depending on level of complexity, a different approach and investment is required to maximize, and communicate effectively your values, purpose. But let me explain that in part 2.
Just on that point, Tristan, how many hiring organisations that in theory have a high degree of complexity, so they maybe got a wide variety of roles or relatively senior roles or tech roles or whatever it might be, and in theory have got the ability to make a high amount of investment in monetary amounts or time or effort, how many are actually doing all 3 of these levels?
That's a really good question, and it's it's quite interesting actually, because what I do tend to see is that companies with such a high complexity tend to struggle with getting things right with employer brand level and also target audience level. And that's mainly because with a high degree of complexity, you've got so many regions that you need to cover, so many target audiences that you need to cover, and so many stakeholders that you need to actually involve, and not to mention legacy ways of working. So high complexity actually means that it's obviously a much challenging task.
And some of them make the mistake, I guess, of trying to be everything to everybody rather than picking out the roles that are of strategic value or the target audience that are of strategic value and concentrating on those. So they either do too little, too much, instead of kind of hitting that sweet spot and concentrating on what can really add value. Okay. And are there any kind of employers that only do the employer brand level stuff and don't worry too much about target audience and job level?
There are, I would say, companies that already have a very strong employer brand in a certain area. So you can take like Microsoft, Apple in the IT sector. They are such a well-known EVP in that target audience that, having to break it down and be strategic on how they post jobs doesn't actually really come into it.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you.
Right, so let's talk about EVP, employee value proposition. So again, there are many definitions of EVP, but it can be thought of as what an organization can offer in return for an employee's time, skills, and energy. So there are also a limitless number of individual contributors to EVP, and all of these can be, repeatedly broken down further and further to more specific offerings. Some you see here, like compensation and career, can be further broken down into pay rises and promotions or stability. It's really, have to figure out what it is within your organization. So whatever recruitment challenge that you're currently facing on any level, you must always revert back to your EVP. Think of it as like your map. It's going to guide you through the whole entire journey. And you can always go back and look at it. So why emphasizing your EVP is important? So let's get one thing straight, and every employer has an EVP already in place at their organization. It's a living, breathing thing. It's pretty much the value an employee gets out of working for a particular business, whether this is defined or not. The big mistake that most organizations make is not spending time to fully understand their EVP before heading into promoting their employer brand. And this can be really dangerous and is one of, if not the most or the main reason that companies fail with their employer branding and hiring strategies. This disconnect between what you promote and what you're actually offering can leave candidates feeling missold. But on the other side, if you get this right, you can benefit in multiple ways. It can help you both attract and retain talent because it's great bringing in new employees, but when their expectations are not met, not only will they head like straight for the door, but they're going to head online and tell the whole world, thanks to websites like Glassdoor. And don't think that word of mouth is dead. People still talk, not only online. So it's important to understand what people are saying. But again, on the other side, when expectations are met and even sometimes exceeded, you'll see your workforce, they'll become highly motivated and even become advocates for your business. And that can help you attract new talent to your organization really effectively. So addressing your EVP will also help you identify where you're falling short. So for instance, you might find out that your employees don't feel that they get enough flexibility to work remotely, which can hurt their overall satisfaction. This information is great because you can either address it or obviously if it's in line with your vision, of course, but really identifying which of these key values your you're having that's positive for your business and which are not. Allows you to define what you should be promoting externally as well. So now comes the hard truth. Unless you're hiring for a small business of like consisting of specialists doing one particular thing, which it's not many businesses out there that do that, trying to create one unified corporate EVP and then taking it to market is gonna fail. And the reason for this is simple. There's just no singular EVP. Each specific audience needs to have their own tailored EVP. So hiring success really depends on how well that you can tailor this EVP to the needs and desires of the people you're trying to attract. And it's got to be different on every single level. So for instance, you can imagine that when it comes to picking a workplace, a sales rep does not have the same needs and desires of a software developer. At the same time, a software developer in London won't have the same desires as a software developer in Eastern Europe. So yeah, you need to break this down also by region and location in order to really reap the benefits from that. And finally, people's needs and desires change. So as their career progresses, for example, when there's changes in the family situation, technology or competitors, you've got to keep revisiting, reevaluating and adjusting your EVP from time to time as well. Of course, it's not simple, but the effort that you put into it will reap rewards in the long run.
And Tristan, how realistic is this for a reasonably complex organisation to do this at all levels? And if they haven't got the bandwidth, can they do it piecemeal? Can they start in a certain place?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one thing we have to really communicate with our clients is that you have to look at the resources you've got available internally. Where can you start? Not taking on too much at the right time at the start, and just focusing on maybe some key areas that your business is struggling in, starting from there and trying to address them, and then obviously scale up, do it in an agile way.
Okay, perfect.
So on to part 3, and that's the 3 main challenges recruiters face. So establishing a compelling employer brand. Now, similar to the EVP, your employer brand is your employer reputation. Every company has one, whether you have a strategy for influencing it or not. So no matter where you're working, your company must have some kind of purpose and culture. Most likely there are also like values that come out of that as well. Often they're defined, sometimes they're not. But jumping into promoting your employer brand without first defining your EVP is a very common mistake. One thing for sure, in the current information age, like a recognizable employer brand together with like a clear, honest reputation and a representation of your values are demanded as candidates are now increasingly looking for work that they can identify with. It's changed. People are no longer only looking at stability and salary as an indicator. They want to be able to identify with that company. Yeah, many companies, small and large, have trouble with defining and painting that overall picture. It's understandable because it's not like it's something that you discuss on a daily basis or it's reviewed on a daily basis. So organizations often have multiple subcultures as well. So in departments and regions, for example, but we'll get to those at a later point. Right now, I'm going to help you to understand how you can create a compelling, overarching employer brand. So once you've got your EVP well and truly mapped out on multiple different levels, it's time to start putting a recruitment marketing strategy in place. So when it comes to activation, we tend to split this up into messaging, content, channels, and a call to action. This allows you to create a structured plan of action. So to establish your employer brand in the market, you need to be communicating core messages such as your company's purpose, values, vision, from the long-term point of view. At this point, you shouldn't go into detail on any specific department, role, or opportunities, but just look at to trigger the broader audience to learn more about you and simply be on their radar. So we want to pick our message, our content, our channels, and our call to action. So similar to the EVP, the AIDA model should be applied and repeatedly fallen back on at every level. So the only thing that changes is what exactly you're creating awareness, interest, and desire about, and your call to action will always differ. So on this level, you'll be creating awareness by telling the story of your company's purpose, values, vision, and driving them through this funnel. But this way you'll build up a following of people who understand what you do, why you do it, and why you do it in that specific way. At this point, your calls to action here should be always to find out more, to learn more, and even have people subscribe to a mailing list or follow you on your social media pages.
And on this, and I get it entirely, both this AIDA and the previous slide, and it's it's all well and good understanding and creating that EVP piece. But once an organisation has got that bit done, where do they broadcast this? What hints have you got around that? What channels can they use?
So with channels for awareness, we want to look at channels that have a broad reach. So we want to look at areas like social media. But what's really important is what you're saying on those channels. You want to create association. So you're not here to push people into applying or anything in particular. You're just trying to get the message across that, what you're doing, and later down the line, educate your candidates along the way. So channels like social media, content marketing on relevant channels, all well and truly good for this kind of activity.
Okay, great. Cheers.
So now to the benefits. It's important to align your expectations when running employer branding campaigns. The metrics you use to measure the results you're looking for are very different to what you expect from job advertising. There's no instant impact. For instance, you'll be looking for an increase in awareness of what your company does, what's the vision and purpose, and this will result in more traffic, for instance, or engagement on your careers websites, social media channels, and content. Ultimately, this will lead to an increase in organic applications and referrals as people are more proactive in applying directly and sharing with their network as well. So this will reduce your cost and time to hire. When your candidates and employees' expectations of the values that your company has are met, you'll see a reduction in candidates dropping out early due to the application process and employees leaving once hired. So you can only imagine what kind of cost saving that does. But going back to the graph earlier, this is the level that requires the longest amount of time and is the longest and the most complex. And what's quite funny is I see this coming up quite a lot. It can be quite hard at times for recruitment teams to justify budget for this kind of activity, and also getting internal stakeholders back in, because the results are not there straight away. So this is why these benefits help to show it as a cost saving exercise for the long term. Right. Okay. So one company I want to highlight here is HubSpot, who are doing a really great job in promoting their company's overarching employer brand in relation to their EVP. They have a very clear understanding of what they stand for as a company, broken down into this abbreviation which you see here, HEART. So this stands for humble, empathetic, adaptable, remarkable, and transparent. But when you look deeper into each of their target audiences, you'll see in more detail how these are actually reflected specifically to that target group. But at this level, they're just keeping it broad, repeating the same message, and really making sure there's an impact with what they're saying. So the content that they use to promote this ranges from banner images, such as the Facebook header, which is the one you see here, but also using channels like social media, great for broad awareness. And you'll see the call to action is never to apply now, but simply to learn more by exploring it in their like remarkable culture code. I've actually added a link here to their culture code. So when the deck gets shared later, people can click through and have a take a look themselves. Everything HubSpot does lives and breathes their employer brand.
Well, no, just one quick question, Tristan, that's come in, because I know we're going to move on to the next stage now. We're going to go down to some target audiences, etc. Have you got any kind of tactics, advice, or even any kind of crib sheets or anything you could share perhaps after the call around how an organisation would understand their EVP or even the segments of their EVP for specific audiences? So a toolkit or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. We've got a candidate persona sheet that's really good for mapping out your candidates or your employees, interests, likes, values, that kind of thing. There's tons of stuff we can share.
Yeah, if you've got something we can share with everybody after the call when I send out the recording, that'd be awesome.
Will do.
Perfect.
Cool. So on to engaging specific target audiences. Now we're going to go one level deeper. What it's like to work at your company as part of a specific employee group, certain location, certain department, and just a deeper insight into what these people value and what your company's position is on this. So once someone is aligned with your company's purpose and vision, the next step for them is to get an understanding about what the culture and life is like for people like them. So most companies will have an idea of what key areas they need to hire in to grow their business. This can be anywhere like IT, finance, law, for instance. But whatever those areas are, being transparent in showcasing your EVP online will attract the interest of that relevant target group. And that key there really is transparency. So again, we follow the same format: message, content, channels, call to action. Only this time we're tailoring it to a more specific target audience. So the ones we defined whilst creating the EVP. Our message changes from stating our overarching purpose, visions and values to explaining how that translates within a specific employee group. So for instance, what culture drives the development team, or what culture drives the sales team. These are the key things that they need to be really finding out here. So the AIDA model, in this sense, again, what we're doing here is communicating your overarching EVP, but aligning it to the AIDA model. Same way we did before, we're going to start by making people aware that your company has a specific employee group. So what is it like within these employee groups? What projects are they working on? The trick in it is to really open up, but you want to trigger their attention with content that's directly relevant for them. Have them browse through your content and your career website, subscribe to newsletters, and follow your social pages. What you want to see is multiple interactions now. So, you're not looking for a quick win. You want to really nurture these people and develop them and interact with them along the way and show them exactly what it's like to be part of that team. Right. So let's look at a perfect example of engaging a specific target group within a company. And this is quite new content, I believe, from Adidas. But they've managed to communicate their EVP specifically for UX designers. And I think you're going to like it.
Focus is key to create. UX design isn't the end of the game. It's where it begins. Once you find that rhythm becomes a dance. You can reconnect with yourself. Your internal beat. Your mind is on survival mode. That's when you break barriers, find new patterns, and open up new flows. I teach my team to focus. We don't waterfall, we think horizontally. We're agile. We don't execute design. We're here to change how things work. I'm Vinny. I'm here to create.
Okay, so that's just great. I mean, listen to the words they're using in the video. Agile, waterfall, all these relevant technical terms specific for this audience, but still keeping that sporty vibe. What's great is Adidas have created videos for every single target audience that they have at their company, tailoring their video to each one. I find it highly inspiring content, and it really truly manages to translate and tailor their overarching EVP, but also their specific target audience's EVP. Okay, so now to the benefits again. The results you can expect from effectively engaging with your target audience on this level include a broader awareness of your company's involvement in specific activities, specific areas. This leads to more engagement from that particular audience. This can be both online in the form of forums, like communities like Slack, or attendance to events like hackathons that you run. These are the kind of things that really get you interacting with that target audiences. Ultimately, you'll begin to generate more organic applications and referrals from that target group as you become more of a desirable employer. That has a knock-on effect, of course, to the application you receive from your job advertising as well. Which nicely brings me on to the next point, which is advertising your jobs effectively. So the third challenge we're going to cover is how to advertise your jobs effectively. You've got to you've put so much time and effort into tailoring your EVP, communicating this into an employer brand. It's really time to assist your candidates at the final step, and that's the application. So once again, we've created this overarching EVP. We've broken this down into specific target audiences. Now we need to go one final step further and communicate this on an individual job level. So you're showing what your company's vision is. The potential candidate is aligned with it. They know there is a sales department and you know what it's like to be part of that team. But now they come across a role that's relevant for them. This is where you really want to capture them. We need to make sure that we communicate the right message. So showing what the person will be doing exactly, what value this role has within that team, and how this contributes to the company. The message needs to reflect the values you discovered, you know, when you created your EVP. So what were the things that came out of that in terms of the different values that you offer to the employer, and really channel that within the job advertisement. Channels are also extremely important at this point. So because it's no good having roles, having great roles that your target audience don't know are actually there. So leveraging a multi-channel approach to job distribution means that your job ads are certain to reach the right audience online. So the right channel varies, of course, based on the different target audience. There's no one size fits all approach to this. So this is how it looks in the AIDA model. First, the candidates will see a role. It's directly relevant for them. So we're looking to hire software developer, front-end developer, back-end. So it's very specific. They then want to know what life will be like at that company in that role. So who will they be working alongside? What work will they be doing? And of course, what benefit they would receive that we discussed earlier. What I see a lot of now is, you know, having naming the hiring manager, having the hiring manager say why they want this person. I think that's really great because, you know, it makes it a lot more personal. And for the hard roles, you know, why not go that extra mile and just put that effort in? So how to make your job ads stand out. So when putting your job ads together, make sure you're keeping your target audience in mind. How would they like to be communicated with? What job specific terminology might need to be included? Just like the target group, the target audience level video. Keywords are really important. So making use of tools like Google Trends when you pick a job title, and relate the benefits you include back to the EVP research on that employee group. So what we've done here is we've put in a link to Google Trends. So when we share the presentation later, you'll be able to click through and have a mess around with it later yourself, and see what value it brings to you. So into the benefits, by tailoring the message, content, and call to action in your job ads to be super relevant for a particular audience, then making sure that they're on the right channels to reach that audience will bring positive results. Not only the response in terms of number of applicants will also increase, but you'll see a much higher quality applicant because you're engaging them on their level and targeting them more effectively. This in turn will lead to a much faster hiring speed. And we talked about channels earlier. With job advertisement on a job level, there's thousands available. So, picking the right one is a pretty tricky task. So use data, use the resources that are available to you to find out which ones are the most effective, and do your A/B testing. So part 4, that's bringing it all together. So we've talked about quite a lot today. EVP, the 3 levels of recruitment marketing, and the challenges that they bring. But in order to make your hiring campaign a success, they all need to be brought together as one directly influences the other. So there are 2 overall objectives that we're trying to achieve with our recruitment marketing strategy. And one is to increase awareness and the other is to drive conversion. So first, we're going to aim to increase awareness on an employer brand level and towards our desired employee group before finally driving conversion. And again, you see some channels here that typically would include in those areas. But it all starts with planning on every level. So what you'll be communicating and through what channel. When planning, it's important to take into account the resources available to you. As we mentioned earlier, when you said, Alan, the resources available to you both internally and externally are really important. You don't want to commit to something that's not achievable really, and falling behind on your plan and not reaching your objectives, like it's not a good feeling. So can you leverage your marketing team to support you? Can they give you a few hours of their week? It's a difficult ask because they're so busy, but if they can just help you, it will take a little bit off your shoulders. Can you work together with external partners for certain areas? The trick really is just not to bite off more than you can chew. Splitting up your content by individual target groups also means that, when you're having difficulty hiring in one area of the business, you can always go back to your tailored media plan and take action. Look at what was working, what didn't work, make adjustments, and you'll soon see that you can really work in an agile way. Right, by putting this plan in place, you're now in control of your candidate journey. So what they see, what content they interact with, and you can really guide them through the process to apply. So what we like to show here is an actual flow of a candidate going through the application phase. This is actually my journey at joining Vonk, targeted at first with social media ads, bit of research myself, followed by an application at the end. What's important is in the current candidate-driven marketplace, it takes between 5 and 7 touch points, meaning that candidates interacting with your company on average before making a decision to actually take action, with actually scarcer target groups moving up to 8 to 15 touch points. And that can be over a month, over 2 months for those really quality applicants to apply. This means that companies need to be ready to answer the questions that candidates have at each stage. So now you've got a plan in place, the job isn't over. Keeping track of the performance of your content and channels by using data is an ongoing, continuous process. Trust us, we do it all the time. First of all, you need to define what metrics you're measuring that relates to the objectives of that level. So for instance, measuring views on an employer branding video or clicks and applications from a job advertisement. Without this information, you can't expect to improve and adapt. So I want to thank everyone for joining. I hope there was a lot of key takeaways for everybody. I think, Alan, you might have some questions to ask from the panel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got one as well. I'm going to be greedy and quickly sneak it in because we've got 5 minutes or so. So you mentioned there that, employees to a certain extent have to interpret their company's vision when creating an EVP. So a recruitment team, a HR team, etc. I have to. But for many organisations, the leadership feel that it's them that dictate the vision down through the business. What's your thought around that? And how do organisations tackle that? They've got a really strong leader who says, "This is us. This is our culture. This is our vision."
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question, and that's really the old school way of working. Top down, dictating what the culture is, dictating what the vision is. But we live in a candidate-driven marketplace and an employee-driven marketplace. We got to understand that the culture is the people. And you got to understand what that is by doing your research. And that's probably why there's such a disconnect between the higher up level and the lower down level, and also a disconnect between your employer brand, what stories people are telling. But you got to be real. You got to understand that things like Glassdoor now open everything up. So you can't just dictate the employer brand.
No, exactly, and I agree wholeheartedly. But to a certain extent, to get that leeway to go out to market and give to a certain extent the warts and all story, which in the long run is the better way of doing it, because the people who aren't right for your organisation will deselect themselves. The people who are in love with what you're saying will select themselves in. You've got to sometimes win over that leadership and present the business case to them, which brings me quite nicely actually to a question that Neil asked. So he said that this all sounds great. Yeah, everything is spoken about is wonderful. Have you got any stats or examples or case studies that you can kind of back up the benefits of doing all of this kind of stuff, Tristan? Whether now or something we can share with the audience again through the follow up.
Yeah, we can definitely share some case studies that we've. One off the top of my head that I can recall is a company called Exact. We worked with. Based in the Netherlands, but they were growing in a lot of markets that we're very unfamiliar with. So the APAC region, for instance, little exposure, very high reliance on agencies, so costs were high. So obviously the opportunity to reduce their costs through marketing was presented. But we had to first start with awareness. And obviously the statistics off the top of my head, I don't know right now, but it was a year or two long campaign, and I'll be happy to share some case studies later.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll get that out. We can perhaps put 2 or 3 in there when we send out the follow-up email. Great. Question from Abby. She said that her company won't let individual countries have their own careers page or their own LinkedIn careers page. What other ways can they raise awareness of their recruitment brand and their employer brand specific to the UK? So it's that talent segment to a certain extent, but then clearly even there's levels below that.
Yeah. Well, obviously we see that a lot. Even some companies can't even create a career social page because the company social page won't allow it. So it's a similar thing. But what you can do then is don't just think about what content you have on your site. Look at what you're promoting externally. So it could be through channels. If you want to promote specifically for the German market, create some banner ads in German that are tailored for that audience, and put them out and market them outside of your career site. And then you'll see that what the stats are when they start clicking through. And then if you see that the results when they land on the careers page, there's a difference between your German content and your UK content. You've got a business case to actually say, okay, well, we're losing people at this stage. We see that the results from our outside marketing are good, but we're losing people at this stage. And then you've got a business case to take to your stakeholders and say, well, we can do something to change that. And that's what they want to see, is they want to see facts and figures.
Yeah, Abby, if you want to drop me a line after this, I ran a session yesterday with a kind of 500 head UK employer exactly around this topic. So if you want to drop me a line, I'll talk you through what we did in that session. It might be useful for you. Okay, cool. So we've hit 3:15, which is time up. And very quickly, I just wanted to go through the poll results. So interestingly, we had nobody on the call saying that they felt their approach to recruitment marketing was advanced. Only one person who said it was mature. The vast majority, 71%, said that they were at kind of beginner stage, and then there were 4 people at novice stage. So again, guys, if any of you want any pointers, any help around any of that, feel free to drop me a line, and I'll have a chat to you and see if there's anything I can do to help you completely independently move you forward. But of course, the guys at Vonk, and we'll share some more detail around this when we email out, can support you on this kind of stuff as well. So when you're ready to go, they're the best organisation to support you with it. Absolutely. Perfect. So we're the number of us. I'm actually with Vonk at one of these events. I think no, none of these. I'm not hiring. I'm in Manchester with them. Recfest. Not sure. In-house Recruitment Live in London, probably. I'm not sure what the Zukunft Personal in Cologne is. I'm not going to be at that one. Or in Liège, Amsterdam, possibly at RecTech Fest. So when I say with them, I'm there at the event. So if you want to meet us, you want to meet Vonk, and you can get to one of those events, it's highly recommended. But given we've overrun by a minute or so, I'm going to say goodbye, Tristan.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Cheers, everyone.
I'm going to say thank you very much, Tristan, and thank you to the whole audience as well for coming along. It's been awesome, and hopefully that was a really valuable session and you've learned something from it. Cheers, guys. Take care.
Bye.